Hey there everyone and welcome to some more dragon reviews. Carrying on with the tank dragons, this next three, oh my god. If you thought Winterclaw was good, these are my three favourite tank dragons that came out in a row in the order of tank dragons. So we have Lynx, Golden Scourge and Ignis. Now starting off, we're going to look at the dragon cores and the silver requirements and all that kind of stuff. So this is where it starts to get a little bit more complicated. So Lynx, first of all, this is the last one of the kind of more normal requirements. It has needs slightly more claws than normal, but otherwise 14 million silver and 45 million experience. Pretty standard there, quite easy to level up. The next one though, Golden Scourge, there's actually a little bit of a story to go with this. So this dragon goes up to level 150. Now the reason for that, I believe it was with Golden Scourge and it wasn't with Furion. I started saying the story with Furion, but Golden Scourge, it was part of a leaderboard originally, getting this dragon, part of a festival, and there's a leaderboard for whoever could get it to the highest level. And they didn't expect anyone to get it to the max level. I think Golden Scourge was one of the first, if not the first, dragon that takes triple the experience to level up. And they didn't think anyone would actually get it to level 120 during the time period. However, it turns out 2 people did. So for the leaderboard, the first place, they had a problem because they had a tie. So what they did was they had to increase the max level of the dragon from level 120 to 150. So the first dragon they did this with, and that was the reason why they had to do it. And in fact, they messed up completely because, as it turned out, they did this like, I don't know, a few hours before the end of the leaderboard. And the guy who did it, one of the 2 guys who was in first place, joint first place, he lives in England, and if you didn't know, day change happens at like midnight during the winter and 1 a.m. during the summertime. Now he's an older man. He goes to bed at 9 p.m. No problem with that, and that's 4 hours before the end of the leaderboard. And he was there in first place. He then went to sleep, and they then changed the level to 150. And the other guy, well, he was American, so he leveled it up further and he got first place. And this poor British guy, he woke up in the morning, found out he got second place. He was very disappointed, and Rumble realised they messed up completely, so they gave him first place rewards as well. But that's a bit of a funny story in that why we got the first ever dragon that goes to level 150. And Golden Scourge takes a ridiculous amount to level up to level 150. Now Rumble learnt from this, and they didn't actually ever release any dragon leaderboard that was for leveling the dragon up, because they realised, oh, what if multiple people get it to max level? They're going to have to do something like this again. So anyway, Golden Scourge, it takes a few more claws. It takes 1,000 in total. The silver takes a little bit more. This was when they were starting to increase it a bit, but not by that much. However, the experience, it takes triple the experience to get to level 120, and then from 120 to 150, it takes an enormous amount. That's when it takes 210 million from that amount, which is like the normal 4.5 times to get from 1 to 120. If you can follow my numbers, well done. Otherwise, basically this takes a lot to get all the way to max level, but the reward is incredibly high health, which we'll get to obviously when we look at the dragon. The third dragon is Ignis. Now this doesn't have a story to go with it, but it's one of the later dragons. It takes more claws, takes like 200, then 300 for the rest, and so that's 1,600 in total. The silver requirement is about double, it's 30 million, and then the experience, it takes 5.4 times. This is a very, very hungry dragon. You need loads of experience to level this up. Not quite as much as Golden Scourge, but it doesn't get to level 120. So let's take a look at these dragons. The first dragon we're going to look at is Lynx. Now, I'm not going to use this just yet because I need to talk a little bit so I can get ahead of its mad attacking. So this attacks every once per second. However, it will actually be attacking double that speed because the second skill, the skill description is actually incorrect. If you read my one, it breaks down a little bit better. So it's got a 25-second cooldown, and the skill itself lasts 20 seconds. So it's active almost constantly, and during that time, it has a damage over time effect around it as to all enemies there. Hits twice per second, dealing 1 basic attack damage. So that's 2 basic attack damage per second, just pretty much constantly for Lynx to everything around it. And also it has a heal over time, which does twice per second, 3.75%, so that's 7.5% every second. that is constant almost, that's active almost constantly. Over the course of the 20 seconds, it's going to heal up by what? That's like 20 times that. It's 150%. It's, 1.5 times heal every 20 seconds, every 25 seconds that it's doing constantly. Lynx is just constantly healing itself while damaging everything around it. And also this skill doubles the basic attack rate of the dragon. So it's doing basic attacks much faster too. That isn't notified in the, that isn't in the description, but that happens too. What I really like is it opens with this skill as well. So we'll see it as soon as I use this dragon now. Oh, actually use the other skill. Okay, there we go. That effect around it right now, that is that effect, and you can see the damage coming from it there. So Lynx does a lot of damage, if you hadn't guessed so far. The first skill has a 6-second cooldown. It does an air effect, little spin there, which deals 4 times basic attack damage and pulls all enemies next to it. Now that's actually really good because tank dragons, you want them to get in the way of you and between you and the enemies, and so by pulling enemies into it, it's going to do that exactly as you want, and it's going to keep pulling them back into it so they get hit by all the air effect stuff. It's just amazing for getting in the way and tanking, exactly what you want a tank dragon to do. Now the problem with it, you might have noticed here, it hasn't got the buff active. If it gets knocked down, knocked back, or as this mini boss is doing, it sort of does this sort of stun effect thing, it disables the buff. That is Lynx's one Achilles heel. If it gets knocked back or any of that kind of those kind of effects, then it will stop it from doing anything. It will die off because it can't heal. However, if that doesn't happen, well, Lynx is basically invincible. You just can't really kill Lynx. It heals so quickly, and it doesn't stun enemies or anything. It just pulls them next to it, damages them, and heals itself. That's what it does. Lynx is a very cool dragon. There are a lot of people who love Lynx because it just, it does things in solo. You can just let it do maps because nothing can kill it. So yeah, it's a lot of fun to use, and I do like the way it looks. It looks kind of crazy with its attacking, just madly going rah 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 while it's doing all the lightning all around it. So that's Lynx. That's how it works. You just got to watch out for any map where enemies are going to disrupt its attack, its buff. Those are the problem ones, but anything else, it can solo itself. Next we have Golden Scourge, which is slightly less exciting than Lynx, but is very cool because its health pool is just enormous, and it has this aura, which is the very powerful thing. Now, this effect here, you can see it actually created a Laden Thief. That is its second skill. It has no use in combat, but you can see there's actually 2 Laden Thieves now. So this is a very interesting skill, and it's basically for party play if you use it. So it's important to read my version of the description for this. So it uses it in one of the first attacks, and it has a 50% chance of creating a Laden Thief. However, what's really interesting to note is it creates one for every Golden Scourge nearby. So if there are 3 Golden Scourges there, and then one of them triggers and it gets it, the Golden Scourges don't even need this skill. They could be a superior quality Golden Scourge. If one of them triggers and makes a Laden Thief, then 3 get made. Now, if all 3 of those Golden Scourges, they all manage to do it, then you can actually get up to 9 Laden Thieves out of this. So if you have some friends who have Golden Scourges that have this skill, you can party up and get a load of Laden Thieves and do that to try and get the drops from Laden Thieves. It's pretty cool for that. I do like it a lot. It's a fun little mechanic to have. It fits with the sort of golden theme of this dragon. Anyway, other than that, the actual damage skills are effective skills, combat skills, are the first skill and the third skill. The third skill's this buff, and that's the really good one. So let's talk about the first skill first. The first skill is a thing that triggers on basic attacks. It has a 25% chance of creating one of these minions that you can see being created here. The damage from them is pretty small. It's very similar to the Scourge dragon. Golden Scourge itself doesn't have any damage skills. All it does is create these minions, which they get in the way a bit, and they do a bit of extra damage. Ultimately, it's not quite as good as the Scourge, I would say. You can see right now it's doing quite well creating them, but it's a bit inconsistent, and usually the enemies will be attacking Golden Scourge, and by the time they appear, they sort of appear off to the side, and the enemies don't really attack the minions, and they don't last super long. They last for 15 seconds as opposed to the 30 seconds from Scourge. Anyway, that's that skill, creates a bit of minions, they get in the way. Now the third skill is the really, really good one, and you only get this, I believe it's at Reddit quality, but what it does is a party buff in this area for 14 seconds. It's got a 25-second cooldown, so roughly 60% of the time it's active, and it gives a damage reduction of 40% to everything in there, and it makes any minions in there invincible. So this minion right now, it will just tank all damage, so that's when they really get in the way. And it went black, so you couldn't really see, but the minion was still there. They get this little shield over them, well, kind of shield-like thing over them. So yeah, that's the really, really good skill that actually makes this dragon worthwhile. Otherwise, it's the massive health pool at level 150. The skills themselves, they're not the most impressive, but that last skill is very, very good. So it helps the minions survive, it makes it tank better, it makes the damage take less, the dragon take less damage, so it will survive better. You can see here it's surviving very well. It is taking half damage because it's shadow and these enemies are shadow. But even so, you can see it's surviving incredibly well against these enemies, even against the big blasts, which are, getting around the minions and stuff. But where this really comes into its own is this damage reduction buff to the party members, because it can be stacked with any other damage reduction. This also makes it good in PvP, even for other classes like Wizard. I don't have it on right now, but there's set effects which give you 50% damage reduction. And if you have Golden Scourge there, who is going to tank like mad because it will, it has the huge health pool, it opens with that buff, and then that gives you the 40%. Then if you have those set effects which give you 50% damage reduction, well, there you have 90% damage reduction for however long you have the other buffs going for. So it's really good at helping your party just survive very well while sitting there and tanking. You can hit it with cupcakes. Excellent dragon all round. I think if other dragons went to level 150, this would be in competition with a lot of them. But as it stands, it's a very, very good dragon. And I think for knights especially, it would be exceptional for just going in there, fighting an enemy, and you get this 40% damage reduction buff. Use Protector, and you don't even need anything else. You become invincible with that buff and Protector. So that's where it comes into its own and really does a lot of work. So the last two dragons were both incredibly tanky. Lynx just doing stuff by itself, Golden Scourge helping the party and really working well with cupcakes. Ignis, it turns everything on its head. This is an attacker dragon more than anything else. It deals incredible damage, and it's mainly because it deals pet damage. But even so, this fire effect here, the fire breathing, does a lot of damage too. So let's break it down. The first skill is very much like Avalanche's skill. It creates an area on Ignis and on the target for 20 seconds with a 20-second cooldown that's just constant, and it boosts fire stat by 50% and your move speed by 50%. Now this is pretty much exactly the same as Avalanche's, however, and I'll just show the stat here while it's active, the fire boost 50% extra there you can see. So it's very similar to Avalanche's, except rather than slowing enemies on this area, it's instead dealing damage to them. That also really matters because it creates two areas, and with Avalanche, if those two areas are on top of each other, it doesn't mean anything. It's just for the other skill, he needs to be on one and the enemy needs to be on one. However, here they actually stack. So if, as we'll see when Ignis reuses it, there are enemies right on top of it. If it creates both of them on top of each other, so then enemies are stood in both of them, they'll actually take damage from both of them. You can see here on this front enemy it's doing that. So they do stack up, and so you want Ignis to go into close range, as it will do, to go in and attack, and then create both of them on top of each other, and it will do incredible damage with that first skill. Now that damage is pet damage. It does effectively, imagining it's double, it does 250% pet damage per second. That is very high pet damage, surprisingly high, and because it's a tank dragon, it doesn't matter that it's a tank dragon, that the damage is lower, the damage stat that is, because pet damage ignores that. It just looks at how difficult the enemies are. So Ignis does amazing damage with that. The second skill, what it does is 10-second cooldown, and it does a 5-second breathing fire, which during that time, every second it deals 2 times basic attack damage to any enemies it hits. However, if they're in the fiery area and bear in mind Ignis will get times 1.5 damage from that being in there. It will deal double that damage and it will stun them. So it actually deals more like, well, over the course of it, it would do 10 times basic damage, but it actually deals more like 30 times basic damage because it's doing the double from them being in it, and then also times 1.5 from Ignis being in the buff zone. This is insane, and as you can see, while I've been talking, Ignis has cleared this whole map, and this doesn't have any damage reduction, but it doesn't really matter because it's already got a big health pool and it kills the enemies so quickly and with such large area of effect that it just kind of clears maps, as you can see. Ignis is an attacker dragon more than anything else. It's an attacker dragon with 4 times the health of a normal attacking dragon. It will go in and it will tank the enemy's hits while also dealing crazy damage. Because some of that is pet damage, I'd actually say pet damage is really good on a tank dragon because they have such a low damage stat. So overall, really good damage output. And let's see how these dragons do on the leaderboards compared to the other ones. So in terms of tanking, because we are going to look at the damage leaderboard too here, but in terms of tanking, Lynx, well, this right up at the top. Lynx is in 3rd place technically, but it's the best healing dragon. It's hard to really say for sure because it's like these damage reduction dragons, they can get healed from cupcakes, so technically they're better when it's a really tough map, but then Lynx is pretty much invincible whenever it's not a super tough map. So they're basically the same. You could say Lynx is the best in the game. It's hard to really pick out which one's better. The main thing here is just like the 44 million health compared to these being over 100 million. It's hard to say Lynx is better in that way. But just one full heal will actually, these add up to 110 million. So effectively over 25 seconds, it can take 110 million worth of damage. So Lynx, amazing for tanking. As we said, it's basically invincible as long as it's not getting knocked back. The next one was Scourge, which is just above with 110 million health. It's got a huge health pool, the damage reduction buff helping it survive longer. It's also got the minions marked by this M, so that's going to help out, help keep it alive. And the damage reduction buff makes those minions invincible, so they're actually very effective a lot of the time. It's about roughly half the time that they're invincible. So great for tanking all round, good with cupcakes, and it even buffs the party, so it can make you invincible very easily if you're a knight. And lastly, we had Ignis, who is lower down. Like, fine. It's an attacker dragon. It doesn't have anything to keep it alive. So in terms of tanking, it's actually the bottom of all the tank dragons in the game. It's the worst at tanking out of all of them. But it's better than, these are like support and attacker dragons that are good at surviving. And it's above all of them. So, it's still good. It tanks well. 46 million health is very good. These are the best support and attacker dragons at surviving. So yeah, in terms of tanking, 2 of the top ones, and then Ignis right at the bottom. But what can you say? Let's go to the damage leaderboard. So for the damage leaderboard, this is where we get our only 2 appearances from tank dragons on here. Lynx coming in very near the bottom. Yeah, okay, fine. It's not as good as attacker dragons, but it's worthy of a spot on the table. It does very good damage, and a lot of it is area of effect with that lightning that's going out around it. It's going to do very well there, and just clear maps quite consistently. I think the important thing to note here is not that it's not as good as attacker dragons, but the fact that it stays alive, and not just stays alive like other tank dragons where it stays there and does nothing. It actually stays alive and clears the map. Which other tank dragons don't do. So the fact that it's not super high doesn't really matter because it's good enough to actually kill enemies. And then Ignis here, Ignis is slap bang in the middle of the damage leaderboard. That is very surprising. I mean, well, let's just look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's 9th place against the attacker dragons. It is better than most of the attacker dragons, I think. And some of it being pet damage means that as long as pet damage is pretty good, Ignis is going to do very well because that's not related to its damage stats. However, it is going to do a lot of damage itself with the fiery breath. Ignis is amazingly good for damage output, considering around all these other dragons around it, it's got 4 times the health. So yeah, Ignis is cool. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and have a good idea about these 3 dragons. I'll see you in the next one.